Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Alexis Lamoni. I am an associate editor and team member of BlackDoctor.org. I'm really excited to be here with you all today. We're going to be talking about Parenting 101, all things parenting. So we have some amazing guests with us here that are really going to be able to speak on the topic, and we can go ahead and get us all started. So we have Dr. Griggs, who's with us. And we also have Mr. Ellis Dean, also a part of the video team. And if you want, feel free to comment down below. Let us know where you're watching from and any questions that you have for us along the way. We're happy to be here with you, and thanks for joining us. So just to kind of go ahead and get us started, I'd love to go ahead and get started with Dr. Griggs. So I would love to just hear a little bit of more about you, for those of our audience that aren't familiar with who you are, what you're working on, what you've got going on. Why don't you introduce yourself a bit and talk to us about, what really drew you in to join our talk today?
So I'll begin with the end in mind. It was Ellis. Ellis is a bully, and Ellis bullies me into being on. No, I'm kidding.
Hey, hold
I was
on,
invited today.
My mom was watching. My mom was watching. So
hi, Mom.
Please.
I'm at my dad's house, and my Uncle Sandy and Aunt Mary and Mama Cynthia, they're all outside, so we'll be on our best behavior. Hi, Mom. Best behavior today. Your son is extremely awesome and diligent. I'll say diligent and persistent when he sets a goal, and the goal is for me to join this panel. This is something that means a lot. The world has changed. Quick about me, my day job, I'm the Assistant Vice President of Community Health Affairs at Access Health Louisiana. It's an FQHC, which is a system of affordable health clinics for all communities. We're the largest in the state, 40 clinics, 47,000 people. Additionally, I'm a health educator for local Fox 8 in New Orleans. It's about a viewing area of about 1 million people every day, except for Tuesdays and Wednesdays, which is what I'm on call. Worked a lot during COVID with that. I'm the vice chairman for the Global Health and Wellness Committee for the 100 Black Men of America. And I wear a lot of other hats, but the hat that's most salient here is I consider myself part of the BlackDoctor.org family, and we have the same mission, and it's to educate and put things in terms that people can understand, to not only have conversations that are relevant to healthcare and my colleagues, but to have real dialogue, talk to the people that allowed us to be where we are, to have this platform. It don't do no good if he looks so good, and that's great. What's she talking about? I don't know, but she sure sounds smart. No, we want to engage the audience in the conversation. And Ellis knew how fond I am of our elders. A high-functioning society is, Dr. Calvin Mackey gave me this. Every high-functioning society is child-centered, adult-governed, and elderly ruled. In the 100 Black Men, it's what they see is what they'll be. If your mentor doesn't have a mentor, you need to get another mentor. Ellis and I shared our families here with our BlackDoctor.org family. Separately, we shared our families, but it sounded like we grew up in the same family. I mean, my elders are sitting outside right now. And when you said, you notice my back set up straight like in church, you said my mom's watching. Oh, hey, Mom. All right. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it, and I look forward to the conversation.
I love that. Well, thank you for that introduction, and just for talking to us about all of the many hats you wear. That's impressive. I don't know how you get enough sleep, but I'm just happy that you do, and that you got enough to join us today. So thank you for that.
Learning to sit, being old enough, long in the tooth enough to be able to shave your own head saves you a lot of time with barbers and all that. You can always keep it moving.
I love that. I love that. And for those that don't know, that are watching with us, Ellis, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what prompted you to join us today as well?
Well, again, for those that don't know, I'm Ellis Dean. I'm the Director of Digital Programming at BlackDoctor.org. But I'm also a son. I'm also a brother. I'm also a father. I'm also a nephew. Both sides of my grandparents are deceased, but at one point I was a grandson. And so if it wasn't for my family, particularly my aunts and uncles, I don't know where I would be today. And so, but also understanding now as a parent, parenting has changed, and my kids, when they were young, I used to take them to go see my mother that was watching. I would take them, and they would come back like, Gigi, she's so funny, and because She was talking to them differently and they needed that experience. However, parents today need to make adjustments, right? If we're not learning, if we're not moving forward, if we're not trying to find better ways, then we're going to become stagnant or regress as a society or as a people. And so when we look at what our children are dealing with today, we cannot apply what we dealt with as a child because there's no comparison, right? Just off the bat. My children haven't even handled a garden hose, much less drank out of it, right? And so that's something that like. So when I say, "Oh, when I was a kid, I used to drink," I'm like, "Okay," and thank you.
Ew.
For my kid, there's no frame of reference for my children. You know, they're like, I go in the refrigerator, I get some crayon apple. Like, what are you talking about, Dad? It's like, okay. So now Dad has to adjust. I can't just keep banging on their head about the way things were when I was growing up, because one, that's going to alienate the child, and two, that's going to separate you all because you're not really taking the time to adjust to the challenges that they're facing. So that was my very long-winded way of saying who I am and why we decided to do this panel tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And to go ahead and add on to that, Dr. Griggs, I would love to hear your perspective as well as some of the ways that you've had to adapt and change, and from your own research that you've noticed as far as, parenting goes, different styles. There's, a huge term now on social media, gentle parenting. How do you gentle parent, right? And how do you integrate the values that were important to you growing up, that you're grateful to have, but also still, kind of add your own twist to it. So would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, so I grew up my grandparents, and my grandmother ruled with an iron fist, the way that she was raised, because she grew up during the Depression, and the times were very different. I could only go out for an hour. On a treat day would be 2 hours at a time. So as Ellis, I had to get it in. I had to get it all in. If I was going to play football in the street, I had to be the best because I wanted to be able to play again. If I got into a fight, I had to beat everybody up and then I'd run home and put myself on punishment until they calmed down. But it's just different. The kids are different these days. I have a daughter that's 24, and I have to explain why. Growing up, there was no why, and I have no wants. You don't want them. You don't pay no bills. You don't ask no questions, and that just doesn't work in this day and age. There was we talk about the work ethic of the baby boomers and how it just that's what we learned as Gen Xers. We will work our way through it. What we did not exist is the whole concept of work-life balance. The whole concept of that kids have feelings and perceptions too. I've taken steps, Ellis, we'll get to that later, to address some of that. But I mean, how many times did you feel included, to stay out of adult grown folks conversation?
What? You couldn't even get in a grown folk conversation?
What?
Let me tell you something. My mother and my aunts and them and her friends, they would stop talking.
Yes.
When you came into the room. Yes. That's how serious it was. You couldn't be in grown, and they would look at you and give you that death stare. The whole room. And they would be like, can we help you? Because you could not get into grown people business, right? And you could hear grown people talking, even though they were only in their 20s. We didn't recognize that, right? That was grown people business. That's the way it was. So, and nowadays, and I remember having that moment, that crisis moment when my daughter was getting older, and we were at our friend's house doing the same thing that my mom and her grandparents did, and the kids were sitting at the table, getting involved in the conversation.
Yeah.
And I literally had to walk away because I was like, that was so foreign to me. But that's when I realized I had to make an adjustment as a parent and recognize that things are different nowadays. Kids they get their plate first now at dinner. And you're like, wait, what? Like, no, you had to wait till you fed grandmama, granddaddy. All the adults had to eat first, and then the kids ate. But now it's reversed. And so, and I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying that the way things are now, we have to adjust as parents versus trying to force something that our kids are going to be foreign on our children.
Well, Ellison, I have to, it's not a pushback. It's a lesson that I've had to learn over the years. There was a purpose to all of that. There are certain things for us that had worked for generations. Like there's some stuff that was ridiculous. I mean, you keep giving me, this doggone these beets. I'm not gonna eat it tonight. I'm not gonna eat it for breakfast. I'm not gonna eat it for lunch. You can keep serving to me all week. I know I can't eat anything. All you're gonna do is make me get hungry, eat and save money and get candy at school because I'm not eating those beets. I think it's just not gonna happen. And I might have an allergy. I don't know, but you don't care. You want to make me eat this, making me eat all the food on my plate. It can lead to other habits. I'm gonna throw up if I keep eating, and if I get sick, you're gonna whip me. That didn't make no sense. Now I gotta be careful because my grandmother passed in 2014, and I don't want none pictures flying off the wall at me. But I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying things are different. But I will say that there's a certain level of respect and honor. Yeah. Again, I go back to child-centered, adult-governed, elderly rule. The reason that the elders ate first is because they earned it. The reason that Papa, my grandfather, would eat first is because he was working really, really hard. And it was small, subtle things that showed the respect. Now, and I'm sure it was the same, there's a difference between adult conversation and asking questions of the adults. Those were always encouraged. Well, I want to know about those world issues. Well, just sit and listen. That's where it's taught respect as you get older. You listen 5 times, talk once. We'll let you sit in the room, just be quiet, and we'll talk about it afterwards. And then I'll answer all your questions. I think we kind of skipped a bunch of steps, and I'm hoping, and with conversations like this, it's our contribution to trying to get it right. There has to be, I think it's a both and answer. You were talking about the garden hose. We drank out of that because that's all we had. Just like you might think it's ridiculous. My grandmother thinks it's, to this day, until our last day, she thought it was absolutely nuts that we would pay to drink for something that came out the faucet. We're paying for plastic bottles, $5 for a bottle of water. Like, it didn't make it make sense. But then you get the consciousness of the kids. I mean, it's just dialogues and conversations and a mutual respect and explaining the why. These kids, you have to explain why the elders must eat first. And once you do the explaining, it's amazing how helpful they are. Oh, okay, well, that makes sense. All right, cool. But it's just acknowledging them as more than just kids, and they are actually little people with thinking brains.
I think you're making a good point, but one of my favorite words is context, right? And so we have to give people and allow their context. And so I didn't know the why. I just know the adults ate first, right? And so, but the context is respect. The cleaning your plate context is grandparents came from the Depression. Food was scarce. Yes. When you're growing up and you're Black and have few resources in rural South Carolina, you don't leave food on the plate. You don't leave it. You're hungry and there's mouths to feed. And so you had to clean that plate. And so that became ingrained as part of, and it just kind of moved forward, even when you're in a space where you have more resources available to you. I'm not an advocate for wasting food. Don't get me wrong. But I'm saying the concept of cleaning your plate came forward without the context of why they cleaned their plate. That didn't come forward. And so we have these kids, and I remember I sat at a dining room table. My mother is here watching, and she could tell you, because I did not like broccoli, and I was not going to eat that broccoli casserole, and I was not going to eat it. And she made me sit right there and eat it. I remember time with some cereal, and I let it get soggy, and she was like, "You go eat that cereal." So there was some punishments that were associated with it. But it was about, she was bringing her context of how she was raised forward. And the way she was raised was you cleaned your plate because her parents grew up during the Depression. Scarcity. You grew up, resources, food is scarce. Hey, you got to clean that plate. We're working hard to put food on your table, put a roof over your head. Respect that. And I think with that context, I think what we need to do when we're talking about parenting 101 here on this particular broadcast is, I think what we have to do better as the generation of parents is we've got to do a better job of explaining the context. Not that they deserve or that we owe them, but I think it will help them be able to process what's happening around them a lot better by giving them that context.
Well, in that same vein and line of thinking, Ellis, I think that not just our context, I think we need to, and what's helped me with my daughter, I guess I'm the I've been told I'm the yes parent, but I like to think I'm the no parent. I'm easy to talk to, but my no's are pretty hard, right? I used to say they're steadfast, but they're pretty hard because I listen. You want to listen, and we need to look at the context of the lives that we live in, but we need to look at their context first. Put on the eyes of the child. Remember your inner child, but imagine having all the toys and access that they have. I mean, it's a 24-hour news cycle that doesn't discriminate on age or life experience. You have these things that fold out into tablets. These phones, they have the exact same phones that we use. So they have the information everywhere. So a lot of their questions are grounded in experiences that we haven't had with them, because each experience they have on the phone, and we've talked about it in other shows, that's a one-on-one experience. And a lot of times it can be a traumatic experience that they can't quite articulate. So understanding the context and what's available to them, the microwaves, the water bottles, as much as we want to pay homage and reflect on how good things were back then, we're not walking 5 years to the store. We're not walking with 25 cents to go get Now Laters. Not even going to the gym. The kids are Ubering to the gym these days to go play ball. Like you're Ubering to go exercise when it's 3 blocks down the street. We can't judge it. And you can't teach what you judge.
Right.
You can't effectively teach what you judge. And that's the tough hat. But and there's no perfect way to do it. I mean, it starts with conversations, right?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I really want to, just to kind of touch on that as well. I have 2 questions now for you both that I'd like to integrate as one. So with that being said, I wanted to go ahead and ask what that adjustment, making that adjustment, recognizing these patterns, these things in real time, what does making that adjustment feel like viscerally in the body? And the reason that I ask is I have a feeling it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to witness, children at, for Ellis, for you at your daughter's table. And it's like, oh my God, they're participating in this conversation. That's not how things were when I was growing up. And it's like that desire to react maybe in a particular way and having to pause, right? And then kind of make that adjustment. So I would love to hear for both of you what making that adjustment feels like viscerally in the body in real time, and what helps you react differently in a way that kind of promotes that inclusivity and that oneness with that child or with the children present. And also how you both feel, just the advent of technology, smartphones, social media, how that's affected the way that you as parents communicate and interact with your children, and just other parents interacting with theirs.
I would say this. That was kind of the title of this program, was like, when I was growing up doesn't exist anymore, right? And so that was really the impetus of it, and you have to adjust to that. So initially, how did it feel? Terrible, right? I felt angered when my daughter and my friend's daughter were sitting at the table and getting into the conversation with the other moms around the table, because I was angry by that, if I'll be really honest, because I was like, that's not what you're supposed to do. That's not how kids are. You're not supposed to rely on that. What are we doing with these kids? And you have to kind of take a step back. The other thing, I had another cliche in my head, and then we were jumping in. So, but I would say that was definitely the feeling of anger. But then the other thing I said is, like, when we were growing up, we had those things that our parents did that we didn't like, right? And you make that promise to yourself, and that promise is, when I have my kids, I'm not going to do X, right? And you promise yourself that, and you don't do X, right? But then you don't understand everything has its own kind of universe, right? So I didn't do that, but that doesn't mean that I'm not, caring for my kids in a way that they need it. And I had to have that realization. I actually wrote a blog about it a few weeks ago, maybe about 2 months ago, about it, because my daughter came home from college, and we got into an argument, and I realized in that moment of clarity was like I was doing what I thought. Some of it was just automatic, that I learned, something that I witnessed growing up. And then I was trying to love her or parent her the way that I wanted to be loved and parented. as a child.
That's, yeah.
And that wasn't the key. I realized that I had to love her the way that was going to be best for her. And just having that realization as a parent changed our relationship, and it changed the way I interact with my children. It took a while, it took a while,
Yeah.
but that's why we're having this program, to hopefully that parents can have that aha moment where you're saying, what is best for my child, not what is best for me and what I missed from my childhood. And if you start trying to relive your childhood through your children, you're doing them a disservice.
Yeah.
I'll
So
stop there.
I have a, believe it or not, I have a short answer. It feels like falling downstairs up a hill.
That's horrible.
It feels like you're falling downstairs up a hill, slow, because there's no book to it. But here's the thing that would happen. So I spend a lot of time with my dad. Your mentor that has the mentor can be your parents, because parenting isn't easy, and you're going to make mistakes even when your kids are in their 20s. My daughter's 24, and she asked for advice. I'm like, man, I hope I told her the right thing. Oh man. But it's respect. It's more listening than anything, and then being, the one thing that I do remember that stood solid with the generations before me, and it's still true this day. I'm not your friend. I'm your dad. We will be friendly, and we'll be, in essence, I'll be your best friend, but I'm not. When they would say that, I think there needed to be more of a qualifier. I'm not just your friend. That's too limiting. I'm your unconditional parent. Like I'm going to be mad, but I love you, and I want what's best for you. And your friends won't always go that far for you. So with that comes a lot of listening and context, and reflection. That was one of the things as a kid that used to make you mad. It's like, y'all act like you ain't do that, but when your friends over here and I'm listening when I shouldn't be, they talk about you doing the same thing I did. And I know that the fear is that you don't want your kids to make the same mistakes. But you have to pick the point in time when the child is mature enough to hear and handle that context in a positive light. So it's a lot of dialogue. Again, it's a lot of, man, there are nights where you don't go to bed because you feel like you gave the wrong advice, and it doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. So the older you get, the more you acknowledge that you're forever a kid, someone's child, and you have the easier parenting becomes, because you can use that as a resource, and know you got to give yourself a little bit of grace.
I love that. And I'm sorry, Ellis, were you about to comment on that?
No. I know you have some questions, and so I don't want to, if you let me and Griggs go, we'll go all night. So you hosting this show.
Oh, that's fine. No, not at all. I'm happy to have you both here, and I'm soaking in all of your expertise. I'm not a parent myself, but I really enjoy the conversation around parenting. All of my siblings are parents. I'm the baby of the family. By a long shot. So all of my siblings are practically like a decade older than me and above. So I've witnessed them integrate in different ways a lot of the things that you guys are commenting on. As I hear you both speak, I see my mom, I see my grandmother, I see the way that they interacted with us between the different generations, and it can be challenging, from what I've observed. So I know that it's a huge responsibility, and I'm just happy to be soaking it all in for free, really. So thank you both. But I also just kind of wanted to go ahead and comment, Dr. Griggs, I know you said that there's not really a manual or a way to kind of go about it, but something told me that you're working on a little something that can kind of help navigate the conversation just around being a kid and being a parent. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about that, and maybe we can share that on tonight's live.
Yeah, so interestingly, there was in 2019, Ellis, there was a conversation in Alexis about not enough African-American men being in medicine. They said the numbers in med school haven't changed I heard 50 years, and I heard 80 years. I'm like, wow. So I asked, was anyone talking to the kids? And basically, the first thing I thought about was the Little Rascals and the Peanuts and the Wah-Wah-Wahs, which, for those that don't know, the Wah-Wah-Wahs are the adults. The kids have their own lives. They have their own ecosystem. They have their own resources, the whole nine that the adults know nothing about, and they seem to not care about. So I wrote a story. It's semi-autobiographical about a little kid, a little African-American boy that wanted to be a doctor. And he shows up for his kindergarten class, and everyone's dressed as Harry Potter, the Frankenstein, the whole nine. But he shows up dressed in his full doctor garb, and everybody laughs at him. So I guess we can play it, and we'll talk about it from there. It's since evolved. Ellis, as a consequence of this book, I've since had my dad, my Uncle Sandy, Uncle Whistle. We talked about this, led to a whole family conversation. So if we could share it, that'd be kind of cool. And the book isn't coming out until November. So we started with a cartoon. The cartoon will be in the book. So this is a real preview. And honest opinions, y'all, in the chat, please. Honest opinions. My grandma might take a switch to me, but yes.
So this is a world premiere.
I love that. Let's see. I'm trying to share it on our screen here. Hold on. Okay, it's just taking a second to load. All right, awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play on that. Start from the beginning. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I said I'm going to be a doctor. First they call you crazy. Then they laugh at you. Then they question you. Then they follow you. And everyone laughed at me. I said, I'm going to be a doctor. And even my teachers couldn't see. I said, I'm going to be a doctor. And my friends, they made me cry. They thought that it was fun, but didn't know how. I said, I'm going to be a doctor. Grandma said, well, that's a nice thought. Be anything. Maybe said, I'll be it, because no doctor looked like me. My mom said, you can do it. Keep pushing, baby, you'll see. I said, be a doctor. Pastor said, okay. That's a lot of faith. I said, I'm a doctor. You know what? It worked. I spent a lot of time inside when I really wanted to play. But every time I tried, a voice inside said, stay. I worked and cried some days. It took a while to be a doctor. Even more work to do. And though I thought they didn't believe, they were helping my dream come true. I studied real hard and fell down a lot. Wow, did it hurt? Oh, man. But when I looked in the mirror to say I can't, my village said, you can. I said, I'm going to be a doctor. I had to learn to ask for help. Sometimes to do a difficult thing, it takes a lot more than yourself. I'm going to be a doctor. It turned out to be true. Now I take care of my village. I did it so you can too.
I love that. Oh my gosh. First of all, voice so cheery, so excited, so eager. Really looking forward to the Audible coming out for that as well. Have to say, and just the way that you paired the words, it's beautiful. I loved it. Feel free to comment in down below what you guys thought. But yeah, I'd love to just hear a little bit more about that. What inspired? I know you kind of spoke to it a little bit earlier, but now having all of us having seen the clip, what drew you to want to kind of create this work, and are you excited about its launch?
So the first question is, were y'all able to see that smoothly? Did it play? Did it play smoothly for you?
Francis loved it, but yeah, I had some auditory issues, but I think we got the gist of it in terms of the journey of the child that said, "Hey, I want to be a doctor." Ran into some obstacles initially, but stayed. Yeah, they're loving the book, though. I know you're a little sensitive.
Yeah, so yeah, the reason I asked that is because just like a bad child, when you want it to show what it can do, it cut up in front of people, in front of company, when you get in trouble as a kid. But part of the if you notice some of in the background, you'll notice the family worked together in the library. The kids were playing on the playground. They were dressing up for Halloween. The teaching methods, so not realizing from the kids' perspective, the kids are the adults aren't supporting them. The teachers are giving them more work to do, and they're just smirking, not realizing they identify, and the village comes together to support the child to do whatever it is they dream. And that's one of the things that you have to express to the kids these days. Listen, I'm with you. There's no such thing as a failure as long as you try. If you give it your best shot, I'm going to be there with you. I'm going to pick you up. We can sit down on the ground, but we're not staying down here long. So what do we got? Are we going back at it, or are we going to do something else? And either way, I mean, there's a clip of the little girl, and it's kind of graphic. So it's funny, but it's graphic, too graphic for family viewing on Family Hour. But the little girl at the talent show, and she's dancing, and the bully, is mean girling her in the front and like play the song. The dad shows up late, he's like, let's do the song. And she gives I don't give a care what you do, da, da, da. But it's the full support of her village. And that's what kids, once they know that they're backed by the village, the level of confidence, there's nothing like a confident child. When our daughter looked in the stands and sees Pops and her mom in the stands, she leaves that thing. It's a different look. And it's not just sports, it's everything. So just letting them know, I want you to try. It's every parent's wish that their kids go further than them. That's it. And Joanna said it. That's wonderful. Dares kids to dream, and that's the thing is you want to encourage your kids to keep dreaming and being persistent. The story of Jamal, he said, "I'm going to be a doctor," and that's why I made sure he was dressed in that same costume wherever he was. You can make fun of me, you can do whatever it is you want, but I'm going to take care of you because this is what I'm going to do, and hopefully his story will inspire the other kids because he'll support them in doing their dream. And the adults, the Wawantwawans, have no choice but to help. You notice at the beginning of the book, the Wawantwawans is like, yo, that's baby, you don't like shots. But Grandma sure is in their library helping with their homework, and even got little Poppy, the doctor, doing the homework. So that given that level of confidence and support, knowing that I come from a village and I can go back to my village and I'm never alone. And I think that's what was meant to be articulated. But our parents, because of the context, like, Grandma with that switch, you ain't have to. Well, no, I needed to be spanked. I did. I was. Yeah, never mind. I'll just say not all kids need to spank, but I still need a switch every now and then. You gotta be real with yourself. You gotta be real.
I love that. I love that. And just to kind of go ahead and add on that, a question that I have, or, comment or whatever you want to call it, I would love to talk about vulnerability as parents with your children, right? So it's one thing, and I really love the theme of the book. It's like, my village has my back. If I make a mistake, if I mess up, if I fail at this thing, right, and I don't succeed the first time, my village has me. But what does it look like when dad doesn't accomplish something that he set out to do in the way that he set out to do it? What does that look like, being vulnerable with your child so that they know that it's safe to fall down and get back up? Do you guys find yourself either having those conversations, or have you exemplified that through your lived experience? And if so, did you notice how it changed the quality of your relationship with your children?
Well, Ellis, I'll tackle that first. My daughter's here with me, and if I'm down about anything, so when we got the house, we had the man cave, and the man cave was great, but whenever the man came over, she was my road dog. She'd come sit in the man cave. I'm like, what's the man? Oh, bro, it's supposed to be the man cave. I'm like, this is her house. Y'all can leave. And she'd be like, yeah, So it's a vibe, and being in tune and being honest enough. And it's amazing how, I talk about my grandmother a lot. I mean, I was devastated, like just face down on the bed until I felt something pat my back, and I popped, it'll be okay. And the wisest words come out of the mouths of kids when you allow yourself to listen. Pops, it'll be okay. She's with us all the time. And all of a sudden I felt better. And I'm looking like, wait, you're 11, 12 years old. When you learn that? Who told you that? If she told me, my grandma would have been scared. But no, I mean, it's allowing yourself not to be artificially vulnerable and being responsibly vulnerable. There's sometimes, you have to shelter them, but knowing that the door is open. I think, Ellis, the best way when we talk about men's health, I talk about the dad should start taking the little boys to the doctor with them for their annual visits, because it's never comfortable for guys. our trail on this path to health is not good at any point. I mean, it's always bad as a kid. But if the men start going to the doctor with the boys, when the boys become men, they can start having the uncomfortable visits that we tend to have in our older age with their sons or nephews or whoever the kids is that they're pouring into, and it becomes a support system, right? So it's all about vulnerability, and that's what families do. We're vulnerable together because we have each other's back. We can cover you while you're vulnerable, right?
So I would say this: the challenge for any parenting situation is we parent from the perspective of what we know, right, and what we experienced, and that's the challenge, because that's not always the best way to do it. Vulnerability, research has shown that being vulnerable is the closest way to reach a connection with anybody, whether it is a friend connection, whether it's a familial connection, being vulnerable, right? And so, but we're, as Black people in this country, vulnerability has been associated with weakness, has been associated with having that vulnerability being used as a weapon against us. And so therefore, especially as men, we are really taught not to be vulnerable, even with our spouses and with our children. What I have found through trial and error as a parent is the more open and vulnerable I have been with my children, the better the connection has been with them, and they feel more comfortable, because I was raised in a household where you feared your father, where I feared my father, and that wasn't always very, very fun, and don't have a connection to this day as a result, being very transparent with everybody here now. And so, because there wasn't a relationship, it was more about fear, and fear in the word respect, right? And so respect has so many different terms and connotations to it. So when now that I have my own children, I realized that I was disconnected from them because I didn't have a good model in terms of how to be a father, right? I knew I wanted to be one, and I knew I had made that promise that when I was a father, I wasn't going to do this or that, right? I had the promise.
Never going to do it. Never say never. Never say never.
But I did not have the blueprint, right? And you got to be careful for what you say, right? Because I said I wanted to be everything. I was like, because my dad rarely came to watch me play sports. I said, oh, I'm not going to be that for my son. And then we got to the point where my son was playing sports, and he got tired of dad being there, right? And so it was like, dad is here all the good time, and he's always yelling. He's always like,
were you Kevin Hart's dad at the spelling bee?
Close, not quite, but close. And I coach. I was a coach for the team, but I was always there, and I never gave him his space, right? Because again, as I talked about earlier, when we start trying to relive the past through our children, we're doing them a disservice, right? We're creating an obstacle that they're going to have to overcome when they become adults, right? So what we have to do is remove ourselves from that equation, go to our own therapy, right? And work through our childhood issues with our therapist, not through our children, but with our therapist, and then find a way, and then really find a way to connect and be vulnerable with your children and practice it. Anything that you have that you want to be good at, you practice, right? You're just not good at anything. You have to practice it. And so even doctors practice medicine. And so when you're talking about being vulnerable, you practice it by opening up a little bit at a time. And then and that's scary as a parent. Make sure that what you're opening up is developmentally appropriate. Let me just say that. Okay, yeah. For the record, you can't be telling your 4-year-old how you used to get down. Okay,
no.
Boundaries, capital letters.
Please make sure it's developmentally appropriate. But in all seriousness, practice the vulnerability. If you have a partner or a spouse in the home, practice it with them first. Because if you're not vulnerable with your children, you're probably not as vulnerable with your spouse as you need to be. And so do that, and then work your way through with your children. And I guarantee you, they will respond, because your children, especially when they're younger, they want that attention from you. They want to know you. They want to be connected to you. And that rejection is a very hard hole to fill, especially later in life. So do it early, do it often, so you don't have to worry about paying for that therapy later on in life.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
but don't force it and don't fake it, because
Yes.
the kids can see. Kids will call you a wah in a minute. Oh man, whatever.
I
They go
love
dad
that.
with them fake tears again.
Authenticity definitely carries, stronger than anything. And if there's anything you both have been, it's been vulnerable and authentic here. So I really know, honestly, like I really appreciate it. I was, in the spirit of vulnerability, I was really nervous to kind of host this panel today, just because I'm not a parent myself. But I've witnessed a lot and I've seen a lot, and I see the way the world is changing. I mean, it has to be so challenging. Like I can't even imagine being a parent in today's society with the way that the world is set up, and the fact that you both actively have sought to carve out time to be affectionate and show up in a space of love as opposed to fear. I mean, that's and really break through some of maybe those generational habits that didn't serve as well, or providing context, providing that dialogue. So I think that that's just incredibly important, and I'm just really grateful, honestly. One of the next things I kind of wanted to talk about was respect. So as I listen to you both, that's a core aspect of the foundation. I would love to hear you both define what respect means to you to receive that as a parent, and how you seek to navigate that journey of, not being just the friend, showing up as the parent, as Dr. Griggs was saying, but using, kind of respect as the, I don't know, I guess the head of the boat of that journey, and how that works for you.
Well, the first thing I want to go back to the vulnerability piece that I think that kind of I forgot to mention was there are times where you just blow it, like you mess up, you give your kid the wrong advice, you say the wrong thing, you do the wrong thing, and it's just it's like practicing anything else. Like it's horrible because you feel like you suck. Like I'm horrible. I'm the worst parent in the world. She's going to be a fit, and it's going to all be my fault, and blah, 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 blah. And you know what the kids tell you? That's okay. If you have the proper hey, no, it's okay. I mean, we didn't know, we tried. I mean, it's a trust. It's all built on exactly that. And the thing is, Alexis, you never have to be worried when Ellis and I especially are around. You're our family. We more than have your back. This is the village. But if you establish that respect early on, just with simple things like, what do you want to eat? Well, I don't really like that. Well, tell me why you don't like that. And then you have real discussions, wanting to know what their perspective is. Let that grow over time. They'll give you grace instead of hating you for the bad advice. Well, what happened when you told the teacher that she was wrong? Well, you have to come to the school tomorrow. Why? Because I'm suspended. Oh, wait, what? And then you got to go cover them, because that's the village, right? I'm instructing you to be vulnerable because I have your back, and keeping your word, and all those things they model, not just for you, but you'll see it to their friends. There's nothing like walking by the room and hearing them tell the story. Well, like my dad said, blah, 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 blah. And it doesn't change now because I do it with my dad now all the time. Ellis, I'm sure you're tired of hearing about my dad, my uncle. Wait, that's what Uncle Sam said. My dad said, and Uncle Whistle, when he was Uncle Whistle, said. But it's just kids model what they see. And spending time with family, it shows models of respect. Watching how you interact as family models for them the lesson that you try to teach them that they might not listen to as kids. Because I don't want to hear that old man say, "Hey, that little bald-headed dude, go sit down somewhere." Oh well, wow, he talks to his family like this, and da da da. So it's all about respect, but showing, not just talking about it, being about it.
I would say that excellent point. I think for me, it's about, there's a space, right, where you can be friendly, right, and have some conversations, friendly conversations, but understanding that there's a line. And when I say, hey, sometimes I got to put my foot down as a parent, and you may not like this you may not like this decision right now, but you're going to understand it as you get older, right? And then that's it. Because I understanding that you don't have to always explain yourself to your children. That's one thing that our parents did get right. right? I think sometimes
Yeah.
parents today tend to
Right.
tend to try to over explain everything to their children. No, because I said so is an answer, right? And so that's okay because that does, for as a parent, that
Right.
establishes you as the authority. And that says, I don't always have to explain myself. So when I do explain myself to you, it's a courtesy, not a requirement for me to say yes or no, right? And so that's, you have to establish that line. Um, the other thing that I would say as a parent, um, I think it's important. The respect comes into uh, that two-way. I like that two-way street. And the two-way street is this. Like, classic
Yeah.
example. My son is 15, 10th grade, going to parties, and we know what that's that age, and where kids start to experiment with all kind of things, drugs, alcohol, all kind of stuff. Um, with both our children, we said, if you find yourself in a situation,
Oh,
call us. We'll come get you. No questions asked. In the moment, we'll talk about it the next day, but no questions asked. We'd rather you be safe than to be afraid to call us. And they tested it, and my son went to a party, and he went to a party. And he was supposed to go and spend the night with some friends, but the friends he was supposed to go spend the night with, they were drinking. 15 people, other people were at the party, were drinking. He calls and says, "It's not my scene. Can you come get me? I think it's time for you to come get me." Went to go get him. No questions asked. Young girl is throwing up in the bushes. It was a scene, and of course we're like, "What are you doing?" And he was like, "No." And that's where respect for both ways happened.
Yeah.
The
keep
fact
your
that
word.
we
Exactly.
kept our word, right? We didn't harp on it. I'd asked him about it the next day. Hey, was so and so drinking? Not a. What was your response? How did you experience all of that? Answer that question. It was cool, and I think people as a parent, you think, oh, I don't have to give respect to my child,
Shit.
right? But you do,
Mhm.
because how do they learn it,
Right.
right? We're talking about modeling. So when you're a parent, you talk about modeling, you have to demonstrate respect. I will say this, and then as we're wrapping up, trying to give some tips for parenting, and I would say, if you have a disagreement in front of your children, because I hear people say, oh, don't have a disagreement in front of your children. You can, but what you have to do is show a resolution.
Yes.
That part.
Having a disagreement is not the problem.
Mhm.
It's the lack of a resolution that's a
Yeah.
problem. So if you have a disagreement and then y'all just go and y'all mad and the child doesn't see how it gets resolved, then that's the problem. But if you have a disagreement and then y'all resolve it and then you're able to move forward, the child can see, oh, you can have a disagreement as a couple in your relationship, and it's not the end of the world because there's a resolution and you show them how to work towards that resolution. So that's the modeling that, as we're talking about parenting today versus yesterday versus the past. The past, I didn't see any resolution, right? They just went away. Then they came back and everything was fine. Like, where was the resolution? But now, kids have so much more access to things. What you don't want to do is get them searching for elsewhere for answers that you can provide for them.
Absolutely.
And if we can do that, then that's the way the respect will get built over
So-
time.
So a perfect example of that happened. I think my daughter she's 12, 13 or whatever, and wife and I were having a disagreement. We were in the other room, and we were going back and forth, and all of a sudden we heard now children, and we were like, is she talking to us? Now children. Is she? And it totally broke the moment. We opened up. You talking to us? We laughed about it and cracked up. So to the point that, like, it's really not that serious. And the reminder, as I saw someone, I don't remember who it was in the chat, said the kids are always listening.
Yep.
They hear everything. But now children, and it's the dialogue. It's the, hey, I'm here. I hear what you said. You hear what I say. Y'all need to do better, because that's not the way that y'all usually operate.
Great.
Again, it's the village, and it's the mutual respect in the village builds for strong relationships.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to go ahead and close this out, I was wondering if you both would be willing to provide us either with, it could be a phrase, it could be, words from someone else that maybe that they passed on to you. If there was ever a moment in your parenting experience that you're like, I don't know if I'm cut out for this. Like, I don't know if I can do this, if you could say anything to maybe that parent who might be watching or who will watch this Facebook Live, what would you say to them, or what words have gotten you through those hard times as a parent and brought you through to the other side?
Well, my mother's watching, so I'm going to say two things. One that she used to say, and still says to this day, just live, right? Life is going to teach you a lot of lessons. And some of them are not going to be at the developmental place where you are right now. But if you live long enough, you'll get that lesson. But don't discount it when somebody is giving you that lesson, right? So just live, and life lessons will happen. The second thing I will say is my mantra in college, and still is my private mantra that I'm now sharing, is never stop learning. Because learning should be lifelong. Learning should be universal. There's not anyone on this planet that can learn and know everything. You should be willing to learn, you should be willing to adapt, and you should be willing to move forward and progress. And I think when we stop progressing, that's when we start dying. And that's my personal opinion. There's no evidence behind that. But I'm like, if we don't stop learning, we will continue to move forward as a person, we'll move forward as a community, and we'll move forward as a human race.
Yeah, so with that, it takes a village to build a dream, and know that you are part of the village. Never forget that you are always someone's child, and never lose that. We want to go, I'm a grown man. No, you're somebody's child. That phone call, you can be yes, sir, no, ma'am, yes, ma'am. Remember that. Keep your kid glasses on when you're dealing with your kids, and understand that they're all different. And again, I agree with that. Just keep living, and never say never. Never say never. Kids will change everything. So give yourself grace and give your kids that self-grace, and you'll build mutual respect.
I love that.
Absolutely.
Love that. You both were amazing. Thank you just so much for carving out some time to speak with us. It's Ellis and my job, but nonetheless, we're grateful to host this conversation. It was such a pleasure to take part in this. I learned so much from myself. I know the audience did as well. Thank you both for holding space for vulnerability, for love, expansion. And I'm just so grateful to be here. So thank you all for joining us. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Good night. Take care.
Thank you. Hey, Greg,